latest adventures, for I have just returned from Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago, your favorite president. Stopped by the old stomping grounds, and we had a great time over there. I got to tell you, Mar-a-Lago, there's really nothing like it. There's nothing like Mar-a-Lago because, I mean, there's country clubs, fancy hotels, but there's no country club that's also under Secret Service protection that doubles as the president's residence. Now, full disclosure, the president was not there. He was in the White House where he normally is. But I was attending the Prager University Gala. I went as a guest, and it was a really, really special event. I attend a lot of different events, a lot of different things, and sometimes, on Instagram, things look all glammed up, creates a lot of FOMO for people that want to see what it was like. They ask what it was like, but this really exceeded my expectations. It was just incredible because my initial thoughts in unpacking everything is when you spend so much time online and you're faced with all this muck and darkness when you get in real life. I'm not going to say Twitter's not real life because there's clearly real problems and real issues going on. But when you get in the presence of virtuous people, good people, intellectually honest people that have been doing good work for many, many, many years, it's very encouraging. It kind of fills your soul a little bit. I know it might sound a little cheesy, but as far as the evening went, it's just amazing to be amongst really, you know, people at the top of their game in terms of their ability to communicate and the work that they've been doing. And PragerU, before there was Daily Wire, before there was any of this whole universe that we find ourselves in, before all the drama, there was PragerU. They were one of the earliest ones to, Dennis Prager has been one of the most prominent conservative voices, and the Prager University space online has been the ones that were the first pushback against the left-wing academia that was dominating all the left-wing ideas that were raising generations of youth to hate the West, to hate the United States, to hate Israel, to question all of that history. And PragerU has been doing just phenomenal work for years and years and years in the online space. So I credit a lot of it to that. So to be here in this space amongst that culture was really invigorating and inspiring. And it left me feeling with this sense that in the long run, while it feels like, people like Nick Fuentes and some of the worst ideas on the right are now ascendant, in the long run, you know, that might be the flavor of the month, but in the long run, the virtuous ones still win. Those on the side of truth and goodness and Western values and all those good things, they will win in the end. So it kind of reminded me that we're perhaps in the middle of the movie, not the end of the movie. We're in The Empire Strikes Back, where it feels like the villains are, unstoppable. There's always that point in the movie, but that's when you're at your darkest point and then things turn around. And that was a big theme of the evening. Got to see people I've been following for a long time, people I've become friends with, people like Seth Dillon, James Lindsay, Dave Rubin. And first of all, it's just great to see people in real life, and with a lot of the message that, was being delivered was that I, there is this response when evil comes up. There's this battle of good versus evil, but there's no shortage of evil. And while there are good people, what's really in short supply is courage. There are people who are pushing dangerous pathologies, who are nefarious actors in this space, and we'll name names and we'll talk about them as we have been. Um, and there are good people. There's plenty of them. But what it takes is a certain type of courage to push back against that. And that requires something. That's a scarcity. That's something that was one of the messages he gave, and he addressed us through a pre-recorded audio because he's still recovering from his injury, but he addressed the audience through a pre-recorded audio in which the commodity that's in short supply is courage. And that's what it takes. There are people who are nefarious actors who are evil. There are good people who are busy and consumed with their lives, but they're fragmented and scattered. And it takes a real focused courage to fight back against that. And it feels like now is the moment where the tide is turning. And we're going to see a lot more courage. Glenn Beck spoke about this idea of this time stepping our game up, so to speak, where he talked about you have reactions and then you have sometimes not equal but opposite reactions to that. And it was pretty inspiring. He got on stage. He was like, I was thinking, as a student of history, this has happened before. It was kind of like he had to pee before he spoke and he was holding it in. Wait, this has happened before to the Jewish people. This is the history that repeats itself, the cycle. He pulled up some old archives of documents of old Jewish persecution took place in France, where there was a document that said you can confiscate property of Jews. You have the legal license to do it. It was from like France, 1783. And this cycle keeps repeating itself. And we find ourselves at that moment, that threshold where once society faces anti-Semitism on the rise, as we've seen it, it's not just bad for the Jews, it's bad for the society. I mean, Dennis Prager said, even if you don't care about Jews at all, you should worry about anti-Semitism if you care about yourself and your country. And a lot of the speakers were pointing to the brain rot that's really infected a lot of these former colleagues, former friends, maybe even current friends, but it's seen the possession that it's taken over, and the obsession when you look at the Tuckers and the Candaces and the Fuentes is like, how is this dominating the dialogue? It's pretty absurd, but it was sort of a diagnosis of what's going on. And it's a dangerous thing. And Glenn Beck spoke about this idea of that there's a reaction and then an opposite reaction and then a reaction to that. So basically some kind of tragedy strikes. They spoke about Charlie Kirk. And then, man, we could have expected some kind of reaction where, there were awful people who celebrated it, few and far, but they were there on the far left, but it actually united and created such a swell of positivity in celebrating Charlie's legacy. But then you saw a darker reaction to that and sort of what Candace Owens has been doing and trying to taint that legacy and destroy that legacy and basically channel all her outrage at all the wrong people, not the people who were dancing on his grave, but the people who were celebrating him and the people who were paying tribute to him. Suddenly all those people are the suspects, which is just very bizarre. But then Glenn said, at a certain point in this battle, God shows up. And he said it like that. God shows up. And historically, God shows up for the Jews. And he gave what's called chizuk, strength, to if Jews are feeling, if the Jewish community has been feeling, a little beaten up over the last 2 years, just remember our history. And when God shows up, what side he takes in terms of good versus evil in this space. So it was very encouraging, and I felt pretty uplifted by a lot of that. It got me thinking about why this has been so challenging is that, when I looked around the room last night and I see all these people that I had a lot of respect for and have been following for a long time and have been influenced by a lot of their ideas, I realized, when you look at sort of the sides that are being drawn in this sort of civil war that's taken place on the conservative side, and then Douglas Murray spoke about this at the LA Gala as well for PragerU. Our side has the tools, has the integrity, has the truth. If you look over at the other side, look at what's happening. If you're feeling discouraged, if you're feeling distraught, just look at what's happening on the other side. Who do you have over there? You have Candace, who is just throwing a Hail Mary pass, claiming France is trying to assassinate her and everyone at Turning Point betrayed Charlie, and she's increasingly isolating herself, kind of standing alone on a rock in the middle of the ocean, metaphorically speaking. It's just increasingly isolated and increasingly deranged. And alongside her are people like, Dave Smith is saying, hey, and I made this point last week on the episode, if this French assassination plot turns out to be true, just know if they try to take out Candace, we are all Candace. And I said to him on Twitter, I was like, well, and what happens if it's not true? Because all of the claims that she's been saying over the last several months, they never materialize into anything. They just keep going. And there's never any shred of proof for any of this. So what does it mean if it's not true? What does it mean for her credibility? What does it mean for your credibility? Why stake all of that on this? What spell does she have over you and all these people? I don't quite understand it. What does it mean if it's not true? Because is it possible that French legionnaires, and it's all tied into the fact that Brigitte Macron may have a penis, and that's all tied to the Charlie Kirk assassination and this effort that they were actually trying to assassinate Candace Owens, and everyone's behind it, including the White House, including all of Turning Point, including all of these former employees that she says, I texted someone, they never got back to me, but I feel it's true. I feel it's true. What's likely? That's all true. And that Charlie came to her in a dream and told her these things that would happen, and that's all verifiable evidence according to her. What's the likelihood that that's true, or she may be a little nuts and wrong and nefarious and manipulative? I think it's the latter. So you have that side. Along that side, on that side of the aisle is also Tucker Carlson, trafficking in endless confusion, demoralization. Who's the one creating disunity? Who's the one departing from normative conservative values, principles, and understandings of history? It's Tucker. It's not his ideas that are even the issue. It's his lack of ideas. It's not the positions he's taken. It's his conduct. Trafficking in confusion. And a confused person cannot fight. A confused cohort or confused constituency of people getting influenced by these ideas can't properly fight for the right ideas and the right ideologies because they don't know where they stand. And Tucker is creating that environment for them. He's also claimed he was molested by a demon in his sleep. No, actually molested by, even though he slept with 2 dogs, maybe the claw marks might have been from them. I don't know, but this really what he said. I know I make fun of it a lot, but he actually claims he was molested by a demon, attacked by a demon. I really believe that. I do. I mean, oh yeah. Oh, you don't like it? That's what he's saying. So there's Tucker, there's Candace. I don't know. There's blind allegiances to them through Dave Smith. I guess maybe it's a clout thing. I don't know. And feels like that's the right side to take. I don't know who else is on that side. It's people who are staking their credibility on false narratives, on falsehoods, on sensationalism, on nothing but insinuation. No evidence, no proof, no integrity. That feels like a sinking ship to me. And on our side, staying the course, I feel like we have the tools. We have the integrity, have the Ben Shapiros, the Seth Dillons. And after last night, after his remarks, the Glenn Becks, the Larry Elders, all the people who actually believe in the principles that they have espoused and haven't been doing it to just build an audience and be captured by that audience. They really believe in these things. They really believe in Western values and Western principles. They really believe in these things worth protecting and preserving. And, Douglas Murray's another one. I mean, these are the people on our side. So I'm encouraged, not discouraged. I think in the long run, ultimately, the trendy stuff wears off and people start to actually be revealed for what they are. And that's what I was left feeling. And so if you've been discouraged, if you've been feeling, depressed over the last year as to where this is going, yes, it's easy to say that. It's easy to feel that way. And sorry if this is clumsy, but we're live and I've never really done this like this, just monologuing. But yeah, I felt pretty inspired by it. Of course, I forgot to mention on the other side, you have the Fuenteses and you have all these people supporting him. I don't know what. You have the Jake Shields and I don't know. Like, does that feel like the winning side here? Does that feel like the good guys? Do they feel like the ones that have it all together, or have they been possessed by an obsession, by a brain rot that Charlie used to talk about? Seems like it's going that way. One of the things I was thinking about in coming out of this gala was one of the challenges in combating all of these falsehoods and false narratives and lies is that it's very easy to lie. It doesn't require anything. There are no standards. And it got me thinking of this analogy where I remember when South Park was going after Family Guy in this feud, and this doesn't say anything about either show. It's just the analogy of they asked Seth MacFarlane, like, why doesn't he respond to South Park smearing and taking hits and shots at Family Guy? And he would say, well, you know, the difficulty is that they can make episodes so quickly. They can keep churning out these things, and their production is so fast. It's a whole different standard. When we do an episode, it takes us much longer. There's a lot more involved, a lot more of the team is involved and all that. So this says nothing about the virtue of South Park versus Family Guy, but just the idea that when people like Candace or these other commentators are putting out just smears and lies and false narratives and peddling and all this stuff, they can keep doing it and doing it and doing it week after week after week. And to try to even untangle it, the reason you ignore it is because once you get drawn into the muck of that, it becomes, you know, you're almost kind of feeding it. You're giving it power. But then the task of actually unpacking it takes an actual whole lot of work because you have a standard. You actually want to get to the truth of something rather than, I don't know, feeling it's true. I feel this is true. I feel this is true. You're actually trying to get to something which requires evidence and proof and research. And so it's already stacked against you when you're combating just a wellspring of lies and dishonesty, because it takes actual work and you have a standard by which you want to meet that by, I don't know, that's why Coleman Hughes talks about that. And even in the I forgot what I was watching. I think Winston Marshall, who was also at this Gal as a Friend, interviewed the person who challenged David Irving in his Holocaust revisionism and trying to claim and minimize the crimes of the Holocaust. And just talked about this. The person that Winston interviewed talked about how he really had to do a whole lot of work and preparation to combat all the and unpack all the lies that David Irving was spreading. So it's immediately stacked against you because those who lie can just keep saying whatever they want to say, and there's no standard by which they're holding themselves to other than what is working, what is provoking, what is getting a response. I remember Candace gave herself away once in an episode with Tim Dillon where she said, "You want to know the truth? We were only going to do one episode on Brigitte Macron, but then they had such a reaction. So I guess that's the motivator. Not what's true, but what is reactive." Anyway, just wanted to get on the live here and try this out. Little solo cast, just kind of be vulnerable and just share my thoughts, unpacking how I felt coming back from Mar-a-Lago, great place, amazing place, with the folks of PragerU. I feel really confident that in this battle that's going on, call it East versus West, and the infighting going on within the conservative movement, I think in the end, I've always maintained that there was a silent majority out there, and that what's happening online doesn't quite add up, especially as now that they revealed what's going on with a lot of these accounts that have manufactured this sort of consensus that public opinion has turned on Israel, has turned on the United States. And you come to look at these accounts who claim to be MAGA America First accounts. They use Israel as the wedge issue. And you click on them and they have 200,000 followers, and it's some blonde girl in a MAGA hat saying, we need to, disentangle ourselves from the U.S.-Israel alliance. They're taking over our country. You click on the account, you click on where it's from Bangladesh or Pakistan. It's all these bot farms. And this is something that James Lindsay, who I saw at the gala as well, spoke about on the podcast months ago. And at the time we were like, what? Where are you getting these ideas that there's this Groyper movement trying to destroy MAGA, that they actually hate MAGA, that there's all this Chinese accounts and bot accounts based in Pakistan and Bangladesh infiltrating our dialogue and our politics? Well, James Lindsay was right. He got a lot of props last night for it, and he was right. And as that reveals itself, I think we will look back on this time, and that silent majority that's out there is now starting to not be so silent. And it takes a focused minority that has bad intentions that can do a lot of damage, whereas, regular good people who actually support the United States, support the West, support Israel, support the Jewish community, support the Jewish people, they're also just working, busy with their lives and their families, and they're not participating in this grievance culture where they're blaming others instead of themselves. They're taking actual responsibility, living by those principles. But now that it's reached this sort of fever pitch, this threshold where it sort of can't be denied, as Glenn Beck was saying last night, now comes the counter response to what's been going on out there. and I think it's going to be strong. And because we have the tools on our side, Douglas Murray said this at the gala in Los Angeles. We have the tools, we have the people, we have all the resources and intellectual integrity, the virtue. We stand by these principles and these values, and we will win because we have that. And I think those who, I don't know, defended the wrong things or put their allegiances on the wrong side might be regretting that in the long run when they look back at this time and say, "Whoa, I think we may have been the ones that were captured here." Maybe they'll be honest enough with themselves to say that, but I do think that day is coming where there is going to be the counter response, and we are all going to level up our game. And it really felt like a community that was united in that mission, to dispel with all the falsehoods that have been going on. I think it's coming to that point. So I felt very encouraged by it. So I just wanted to share all that with all of you. There'll be more episodes to come. This has been a Wednesday night live stream, kind of the first time I've done this, just going solo, off the cuff, riffing with everybody. We're back from Mar-a-Lago. What a great place. Thanks for coming, everybody. We appreciate it. And thank you for watching this episode of Ami's House. I hope it wasn't too all over the place. Tune in next week for next week's episode as we cover the hot topics of the day, the things going on online in the interwebs. Follow us on Patreon as well. We appreciate your support. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a good night.